October 25th. Any adjustments to the agenda? I have none.
Molly, where is the policy that we talked about last week?
You gotta help me.
The reward policy, the meeting we had.
Oh, you gotta have the final read?
Well, we need a discussion on it at least, and then a vote.
Are you talking about the last policy that we had, that we
The
did the
one that
first
we did
read?
together, the high school one last week. On the, having the administration develop a reward system for teachers or support staff or anyone retiring or getting done after years of service.
So we have policies, if any, we can talk about it then.
Yeah. I didn't see that, that's why, I don't know, maybe it's been updated since I saw it.
Okay, review and approve board minutes of August
That's why.
23rd and September 27th. Does anyone have anything they want to change on them?
No, but on the 23rd, I was present.
Yes, Molly, I do.
Yes, David?
Okay. The minutes of August 23rd refer to John broadly as saying that the ME engineering report had been distributed to board members. As of that date, in fact, it had not. And that ME report did not get distributed to all the board members until October 13th. So I'm making a point now because John is quoted as saying it's been distributed. But if you go to the 10-minute, 30-second point in that meeting on Hvac TV, you will hear me very clearly state that it had not been distributed to board members. So I'm asking for a correction to the minutes, not necessarily to strike John's comments, but to include mine, that the minutes, the ME engineering report as of August 23rd had not been distributed to board members. Thank you.
Is there any other adjustments on August 23rd's? Brenda needs to be added as being present at the meeting. So let's do one at a time so we get it correct. The minutes for August 23rd states from Principal Broadley that the ME report was reported, but we need to remove that. It was not reported. We need to, no, I'm sorry. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we add that David Clark corrected him in saying that the ME report was not reported to all board members at that time. Sorry, I don't know who's taking minutes, but I hope they got that. So we're gonna add Brenda being present and add David Clark's correction on the ME report not being reported.
Molly,
Something else on August 23rd?
Yeah, Molly, I don't think it's really super important, but what I said under director's comments was that I had read that the cold was a COVID type virus that had been downgraded. Didn't go with the next sentence. It was vaccines will help protect us from illness. So it's good for our health.
So how was that wording supposed to be?
I would think that it should, and I didn't go back and listen to it, but I know from what I would have said that should probably say in the second sentence, I read that the cold is a COVID type virus that has been downgraded, rather than putting it forward afterwards. Across that, I read a report and just put vaccines will help protect us from serious illness. It's not crucial. It's not a motion or anything, so it's not a crucial thing.
So are we in favor of approving these minutes, or do we need to send them back and approve them next month? Have the reporter look at the recording and see how it was spoken. All those in favor of reporting the corrections as made with Priscilla's correction on her comment, I'll roll call you. Deb,
Aye.
Margot,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Priscilla,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Ian,
Aye.
Jack,
I was late to this part of the conversation, so abstain.
Okay, the motion passes that we're correcting the minutes on 8/23, that the ME report was not reported and David was reported, and David is correcting himself, saying that he said that it was not reported. Brenda is present on that meeting and was not listed, and Priscilla would like to change, or would like to reword her comments to the cold as a COVID type, and the vaccines will help with serious illness. Now let's move on to September 27th minutes. Does anybody have any adjustments on September 27th? Seeing none, let's approve the minutes for September 27th. Deb,
Aye.
Margot,
Aye.
David,
Aye.
Brenda,
Aye.
Priscilla,
Aye.
Jason,
Aye.
Ian,
Aye.
Jack.
Aye.
Thank you. Communication and public comments. Is there anyone online?
No one on right now. I can see.
Okay. Is that Mr. Lambert? Are you public comment or just hanging out?
Hanging out.
All right, well, you're good company. Okay, there are no communication or public comments. Policy, Priscilla would like to talk about a policy that we talked about at our last policy committee meeting just for the high school. You have the floor, Priscilla.
We talked about the rewards for people that have served our students and our community as people working in the schools, and came up with a policy that the BFUHS board would support the recognition of members of the staff, and asked that administration come up with a procedure for doing that. I didn't pick up the exact precise tiny bitty
I'm trying to find it.
this tonight, but that was the gist of what we did.
I think that, John, you and I were gonna get together and start something, weren't we?
Mhm.
And we have not done that yet. I think we need a couple more weeks, get through we'll probably try to do it during our break in sports between fall and winter sports. Does that sound good? And so we will get going on that, but
So this should
I'd like a
serve-
couple
this-
weeks if I could have it.
Right, and this should serve as our first reading. So I don't know if we have to vote on that or just, we've done a reading.
Well, I think until we get established, we can't really do a first read until we
Well,
have
we
something
don't need the
written, right?
procedure to do the policy.
Okay,
We just need that's the policy, so we could actually do that as our first reading, and then you can add
I can
that
get
to it
I can get
too.
the actual verbiage and get it out to everybody on the board,
Yeah.
so I apologize, I just don't have it in front of me, I thought it was in here.
I'm not a fan of doing the first read until we actually have some facts in front of us, but I guess I'll take a roll call if, what you guys think. I would like to see something, in front of, nobody knows anything about it except for the few of us that talked at that meeting.
4 of us at the meeting, right?
Yeah.
Brenda, you weren't at the, who was at the meeting? Margot, was
I
Margot?
was there, Margot.
Margot,
Can
are
you
you
add anything,
comfortable
Margot?
with, trying to do a first read without really having anything spelled out?
Well, I feel like, I think Priscilla is right that we don't need the procedure, but
Okay.
I'm not comfortable with the fact that we don't even have the actual wording.
It's pretty precise what I said. It's pretty close.
It's pretty close, but I think we need actual wording. And I think Andy was the one taking notes that night. And
I
he
think
doesn't
that,
have it tonight.
we're pushing a lot into this meeting tonight, and I would like to revisit it, and we'll have 2 meetings next month so that we have time to.
Well, we have to have a second reading anyway, and then we have to have an adoption meeting, so, I mean, doing a preliminary is okay. And then we can just,
Go ahead, Jack.
move on.
With all due respect, this is like passing legislation that hasn't been written yet. And while I do support the idea of expediting, I don't think that it's fair to ask people to vote on something where there isn't a text in front of people, and frankly, it's improper. So I would prefer to move on and not address this until we actually have the legislation, if you will, in front of everyone.
Andy, do you have that?
I thought I did, I don't. I'm sorry, I left it back in my office. I will get it out.
So you can all own this one. I didn't get it on the agenda.
It's okay.
If you gotta have, I always
we
try to
can do it
remind
next
everybody,
meeting.
get it on the, help me get that agenda written, but I think we ought to just, everybody knows what we're trying to do, and we'll get it on the next one. So let's go to reports, the principal report.
Okay, I'm going to read through it. I distributed it on Friday to board members. Hopefully everybody got it. So I'll go through it. Our fall sports are going very well. All of our teams are in playoffs this week now. Boys soccer goes to the Gens tomorrow. Girls soccer goes to Stowe on Wednesday. And on Friday in the afternoon, field hockey is at home to Colchester. And then in the evening, our football team will host Fairhaven. So two of the teams are going very well. I think the girls and boys soccer, it's great that they made playoffs and they're going to go and represent us and fly the flag. Cross country, they've had approximately 6 meets, and they're getting ready for their state meet on Saturday. And we have a small girls team of 7 runners, I believe. And we still, although there's one missing this year, that makes me very sad, but mental health is important. I still think they're going to put up a great showing, and they have a good shot at maybe coming home with a 4th in a row title. As I say, I'm sad the one that's missing, but mental health is more important. So NEAS visit, we've got our NEAS collaborative conference coming up, and it's on November 15th and 16th. We have a visiting team coming out. They will work in this room on the Monday the 15th and the Tuesday morning. They'll visit classes, they'll interview just about everybody to ask them their questions on how they think we're doing. I would like some board representation, and I will put out a Google form to see, I haven't finalized the times with the chair of the committee yet, but I would like a lot of you folks to, if you have the time to, even if we could set it up as a Zoom, to give input, because I think it's important that we get everybody included in what we're doing. So facilities update. So we're waiting to receive on our HVAC. We put out to bid for an engineer to design our last phase of the work we need to get done. We're waiting for bids on Wednesday at 4 p.m. is when they have to have them in. Interested engineers will develop the bid specs for the remaining phase. These bids will be open on Friday, I believe at noon. Flora, is that right? Noon on Friday, we're opening the bids. When we select the engineer, then they'll need time to digest the HVAC work and design what still needs to be completed. in this final phase or phases, and then put those specs out for a company to bid on to do the work. From the specs, we can write up hopefully a request for ESSA funds to help support this project to complete this HVAC work. We've put in a request to ESSA 2 for our electrical circuit replacement that will be handy for, or not handy, very essential to be able to control the automatic use of the generator and use the generator in high peak times to eliminate the penalties associated for non-compliance of the tariff agreement with Green Mountain Power. That is basically when they tell us they'd like us to shut off power and go onto our generator, we can do that, and we get a very good rate on our billing. Next, we did speak in Buildings and Grounds about roof replacement and buildings in that meeting. And Sean Burke, our head of maintenance, reached out to our last roofing installer, and they walked around to inspect all parts of the roof and have a look at it. And the hope was that he'll have us something drawn up by Wednesday so we can discuss it at our next Buildings and Grounds meeting. So that'll at least give us some food for thought.
Excuse me, John, just to correct this, the Building and Grounds meeting is not on the 28th now.
It's not the 28th, it's on we moved it to the following week, just so that.
So what's the date, do you know?
The 4th, I think it is.
Okay.
So we can
I just wanted to get that out there.
Yep, so we can make sure everybody can be there. And I think Nicole put that out today to everybody, hopefully. COVID update, as of Friday, with the nurse, we've had approximately 12 positive cases. I say approximately, we do know the ones that are in front of us. However, there are some kids and families that they will self-diagnose, go and get tested, and we don't find out till a later time. So the nearest data we can get, there's 12 positive cases. And to date as well, I had Serena run a report because we code students when they're quarantining. And there's been a total of, up to then, of 261 student days missed through kids quarantining. Our current vaccination rate for students, and that is based on cards produced, is 88 out of our 312 students, which is 28%. I will say, having done contact tracing calling over the last few weekends, we have a lot of kids that certainly parents have voiced that they're vaccinated and they still haven't sent in cards. I have asked them to when I was on the phone. I've had a few sent in that way via email. It's just a difficult thing, I believe, for parents to send them in, or they don't want to send them in. I don't know what it is. I had Rebecca look at doing an incentive for a Dunkin' Donuts card to get them in. Didn't have much impact on it, but I think really what is needed is we just got to call and ask if we can get it. And we're at a state now where I think we're comfortable enough now, and having phoned in, as I say, about 50 or 60 parents in the last couple of weeks, that I can start making reminder calls to get a more truer vaccination rate. So, winter update. The athletic directors met with the superintendents, I believe, Andy, on Monday, to discuss winter sports and protocols for masks and fans.
They met before,
They met
and then they
before you.
updated us,
Okay.
so I don't want to.
So they met, and really in talking with our AD, there was really no consensus reached by the ADs on what was going to happen and what we were going to have in masks and fans and what would be required. The superintendents were then tasked with meeting, I believe, after that, to make decisions in our areas, or the BPA will make the final decisions before the season begins. I don't know what to suggest, because we can suggest one thing and the BPA can suggest another. I do feel confident that if the superintendents make a suggestion, that we go with that until either or the state or VPA override it. So
Are you looking for any additional comments on that right now? or-
I don't know. It just seemed Ian was very flummoxed, is a good word, about so many different standings on it. You know, some ADs were like, yeah, no fans at all. And other ADs were like, yeah, I think we should have like 4 or 5 per player, and we can have them sign in. And some are like, well, we don't care, just pack the house. So he didn't see any direct, because I said, come on, there must be a direction in it somewhere. And he didn't really see any. So
I'd like to hear your 2 cents, because I'm
Okay.
very interested in it.
me too.
So the first thing is the superintendents do not feel that this should fall solely on the athletic director's shoulders. And so that some consensus needs to be found. In talking with the superintendents, they're just as John was saying about Ian, there are a couple of superintendents who want no fans, every player masked all the time, and all players 100% vaccinated. So that's one extreme. And then there was almost the opposite extreme, just let them play. And so, and people are kind of in between. The VPA and the AOE are supposed to come out with guidance tomorrow. The feeling is that won't have a lot of guidance. And so, but the superintendents feel that as far as the Southeast region, it'd be smart for us to kind of try and come to some consensus, because if Windsor is saying no fans can go and anything like that, and we're saying everybody can come, we're sending different messages, and people are going to get frustrated and upset. And so I think for me, I think it's important. I mean, as a parent, wanting to go see my kid play was important. So I think trying to come up with some way to have where folks we're limiting the amount of access, that we are following the rules of the high school, which is mask mandates right now, and that everyone is masked when they come in. I personally would be open to just having a discussion about players wearing masks during competition times. I mean, I know that's it can be rather difficult. I mean, it's difficult to sit here, and we all know that. And if you're exercising, it can be more difficult. My own kid played hockey last year, and they had to wear a mask, but the mask was away from right in front of their face. It was off a little bit. So that I don't know who's calling me, because that's the backup call. Someone in Chicago. I don't know anyone in Chicago anymore. Sorry. And then I think where we are at 28%, I think that if we could come up with some way, it might be a good incentive way to maybe boost up our vaccination rates. But I don't know if we can get to 100%. I mean, we had difficulty as an entire community coming up with that mandate for our own teachers. I think it would be a kind of a double standard if we said, teachers, we want you to be vaccinated, but if you don't, you just got to test. But all your athletes have to be vaccinated. I think that's kind of will be a tough double standard. But I think getting some things in place and trying to come up with some regional consensus is going to help us stay open and allow us to keep playing, as opposed to someone coming in and shutting us all down. So.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't have a definitive answer.
So when I think about this, and I can't imagine having my kid playing and not being able to go see, so you probably have to come get me out of underneath the bleachers or something. But in our school, at least in our school, our home games, we have a huge facility. And so I'm just gonna say this because I think about it all the time. I keep getting told about we're safe if we're in our own pods. So even if we have to get, a little ingenious about how we break up that gym so that you know, if I want to come be in the dog costume, but I have to be in one spot and I have to stay 6 feet away from the Terry family, okay. But, you know, even if we do something in the bleachers, and I think I hope that we can really think about how we have a huge facility. If we open up both sides of those bleachers, and if we have to stay in pods, okay, we stay in pods. We are able, I get that you don't want, to open the gym maybe to the complete public, but, as long as we control it and we let parents come in, I had a parent tell me this weekend that, just couldn't believe, that everything that had gone on in this one person's career, he was a senior this year, maybe I think a senior, but it doesn't matter. And she hoped so much that she was gonna be able to get into that gym. And I agreed with her, I'm not telling you that, if something goes stupid and they tell us we've gotta shut it down, I'm not gonna pick it out in front of the school, but I hope we do everything we can to try to let families come in.
Yes, a couple things. I wanted to, if this is okay, this is what Fall Mountain's doing. I picked it up off their website. And hopefully everybody can hear me out there. So Fall Mountain has a decision-making matrix on athletics and how it's going to work as far as minimal, moderate, substantial. It's just a guide. I pulled it right off their website. So basically Fall Mountain is athletes, no mask. That's under moderate. That means between 50 and 100 new cases per 100,000, and parents 2 to 4 guests per athlete with a mask. So, so I wanted to give this to you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
To, if you wanted to use it for decision making, and I think as a state, we're gonna do something, no matter what we decide, the state's gonna dictate, like they always do. But our gym is unique, like Molly says, because it has, I think, 6 HVAC units in there. The square footage on that is probably one of the biggest gyms in the state. And actually, every fan does not need to even come into the school. They can use the back doors, and monitor it that way. So we're in a really good spot here. So thankful for that. But I wanted to have that and to help with decisions. And me as a parent, I don't need to see my son play. I would love to see him play. I'd love to see my daughter play. But I'm secure in the fact that I just want all of the kids to play, period.
I think some of the other thoughts of the superintendents were, things like home games allow your own, fan base or parents like of that, but not traveling. But again, where people didn't want to get into or wanting to have some consensus is we didn't want anyone from any schools to travel to another school and to be told you can't come in or something like that. So we want to have some definitive things, and I think something like this might be real useful. So thank you, Jason.
Yeah, they had that out last month. So and again, Fall Mountain, it's New Hampshire, but they are 4 miles away from us. So you gotta use common sense with everything we're trying to do these days. So thank you, Mike.
Thank you. John, I think.
Yeah, the only other thing, the testing and grades, we haven't done a lot yet, and there has been, just through notice in classes and kids individually, a regression of learning, which I think is across the country. We did our MAPS testing for 9th graders. We do it 3 times a year, and the hope is the first one was for like a baseline to see where we're at and just continue to move and see the growth in our students, certainly through 9th grade to begin with. Initial data is, and it's just, I don't know what it's relative to really, but 29% are in the low to low average range in math, and and 39% are in the low to low average range in ELA, namely reading. So we want to pay attention to this. We want to, we've already started talking as a faculty on procedures on, not procedures, but just how do we support kids as to the maximum extent. And quarantines are making it hard. Kids being out, making it hard. Social and emotional is a big challenge. The mental health is a big challenge for a lot of our students, and it's all hands on deck, and we're doing individually what works for each individual student. And that's the way it's got to be until we get this rudder working and we get kids back on a good course. I do think, though, that I believe through data that, or through observation as well, that having our students, we were one of the few schools that had kids back more often last year, and I think that has been helpful to our students. And I think summer school and recovery of learning has been helpful as well. And as I say, I want to see, we're gonna test again in December and then again in March or April, and see what sort of growth there is, and I'll be able to report out the growth in our 9th graders then. So but that was the only testing we have for now. The other that was done was SATs and PSATs, and they're kind of personal data for kids. We could probably get a collective take on those.
So John, before you move on to
Yep.
the next one,
Sure.
Jack Breyer has his hand up.
Sure.
Hi there. Just want to make a small point, which is that the last set of testing attests not just how well we did during the school year that was badly interrupted, but it also is a metric that tells us how well our summer programs did to offset that. And this is important because we're having more interruptions and we're going to have more summer school next year. And it's important for us to perhaps have a better handle on who needs to be in class during the summer, whether or not we have a program that is semi-voluntary in the way last year's was, or more mandatory, and make certain that we capture the kids that are in trouble, and perhaps look at structuring the program perhaps a little less like camp and a little bit more like freshman academy, except across the grades, so that we really can be sure that that students are given the opportunity to catch up on their essential skills. We'd all like to think that COVID was a one and done situation. We already know that it's not. We can anticipate kind of interruptions we had last year extending through this year and possibly even a year afterwards. So we really do need to have a bit more planning. We had the excuse of it being sort of improvisational because everything was last year, but I'd like us to really make sure that we catch the kids that are in trouble, catch them before the end of the school year, and we have a plan to make sure that they're in school receiving instruction and that instruction is successful.
Thank you. Priscilla?
Yes, back in August, John, we had asked you for the breakdown of AP testing, and I think you probably have just kind of forgotten, but if you could get that for us, the number of students that got 5s, 4s, 3s, 2s, 1s.
Yes, I did.
And the course, and compare
Absolutely.
it with the courses they were taking. That would really appreciate that.
Yeah, I will.
Also, going back just a step on the COVID positives and the number of students out, I did just a little bit of analysis because I was kind of curious. I mean, 261 student days sounds like an awful lot. And anytime a student is out, it is more work for a teacher to have to catch that student up and help that student. And so we want students in school every day. However, if you look at the fact that there were actually 9,984 student days between all of our students, we end up with 2.6% out of school and 97.4% in school. which is not too bad considering we were looking at COVID. I would love to see whether you could compare that to what we were looking at in 2019-20 school year before COVID. I don't know if you can do that, but if you could, I'd really love to see where we were at.
Can you email those two questions to John and
I sure can.
Thank you. Yes, Jason.
So is Mr. Bradley doing his whole report? Now he has questions, or we just like have to keep going? 'Cause I had questions about the BC stuff too.
Oh,
How
No, I would go, the Hvac stuff is later on. I put it
No,
out to
I'm
everybody.
sorry, the facilities update number
Yeah,
3.
yes.
I didn't know if,
I kind of
If it was-
butted in there when it came to the fall sport, winter sports, didn't I?
yeah, I didn't want to, so I can wait.
You're almost
No,
done, so
Yeah, any question,
I
questions?
think go ahead.
All right,
So
so,
it's fresh.
so I had a question on facility update. Not a question, just a suggestion. I know that we're going to be looking at them, or you're going to be, somebody's going to be looking at them. And it seems like whether it's towns or schools, they always go with the lowest dollar. I think it's really important that if we're going to fix it right this time. And then, I know we need to also look at the last person that fixed it and are we holding them accountable? So I think that is huge for me. And we really want to give value and we want everybody healthy. So it's a big thing. And then Molly, I'm not sure, who is doing ESSER now? So like when Mr. Barley says it's got to go to ESSER, who is responsible for getting it to the next step? I'm not sure. Okay.
And so just for a point of clarification, the ESSER 3 funds, or ARP ESSER, that is the large amount of money that's infrastructure dollars, hasn't even been released yet. In the sense, we know, we can see what we have as dollar amounts and we can start kind of targeting things, but we don't know when those dollars are going to be released, because that is dependent upon the state's plan being approved by the federal government, which they did submit and it was rejected or returned. But typically when the states apply or send their plans in, they're typically returned the first time. So it's not a bad thing, but it is just taking time. So I just want people to remember that, like, accessing ESSER 3 funds, there's these layers. It's not we're gonna have those monies like by November.
So
We'll be able to do the work by November.
I just want to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying. Somebody signs off on a Friday or whatever. You work all weekend, you send it in on Monday, and then it gets approved. We start construction
No,
January 1.
no. So there's these layers, and so the first one
I hope
is
so.
like a conceptual concept. So if we were talking about the HVAC system, we would apply and we'd send in, we'd have this concept we have to get concept approval. So we say, we need to repair our HVAC system. This is the reasons why, blah, 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 blah. Here's what we think it'll cost. We kind of throw that all in there. If that gets approved, then we can go ahead to the next phase. But because it's federal dollars now, there's all these layers where the federal government has to now go back in, and every step has to be approved before you can move on to the next step. The final step, or one of the pieces that we have to sign off on, is the assurances that everyone understands that these are federal dollars. So that means that HVAC system is owned by the federal government. So that if you sell your building one day, the federal government has a right to come and ask for their things back. So it is it's not a quick process.
Thank you. And just lastly, I was to echo Priscilla's point. I had that. My math was a little bit different on students. I wasn't exactly sure how many students we had, but I wanted to say, congratulations, good job on the number of students that are student days that people are actually going to school. It is in the high 95, 96%. So, keep that up, and appreciate your efforts on that, and the nurses, obviously, as well.
And what I wanted to just say, Jason, is I would like us to, even though we open the bids Wednesday or open the bids Friday, I would like to bring those to buildings and grounds.
Okay.
So as a subcommittee, we can all put our heads together and say, okay, who's the best one to take?
I assumed that was gonna happen, but I'm sure
Yeah, yeah.
another board member would correct me in a second.
Molly, can I use
No, I'd love
math?
to do that, because
Hold on,
Mayor,
just,
what I
I'm
did,
gonna, David had his hand up.
okay, but I wanted to answer his math.
Okay,
Can I do that? What I used was the 312 that John had said students he had.
Yeah, I
And
just didn't
and
know how many students
multiplied
we
that
had.
by
I just
the
got-
18 and 14 days that we were in school as of the date he gave it. And then simply divided 261 by that 9,984 to get the 97.4%.
Good number.
David,
Thank you, Molly. Question for John about HVAC. John, who's been invited to bid on HVAC?
who, what?
Who's been invited to bid on the HVAC?
I had Jim give me a list of 4 people, or
And
give
who
me a
are they?
list. Give me a list. He gave me a list of 4.
Who are they?
Let me find them.
he's looking.
I don't know who they are. Flora, do you have those lists?
Cold all day, it's not cold in here.
Thomas Engineering and Associates in Waitsfield, Vermont. ARC Mechanical Contractors from Bradford, Vermont. BLW Engineers from Littleton, Massachusetts. ME Engineering from Schenectady, New York. That's the 4 that we have.
Okay, got a follow-up question. Has this been advertised?
Advertise itself, no. What we did was I did mail the bids per Mr. Bradley's suggestion to these 4 companies.
Well, Flora, of course, I was asking John, but I appreciate your willingness to answer the question. It is not at all uncommon with large-scale work that requests for proposals appear in advertising. You see them all the time in the Brattleboro Reformer as well as other newspapers. And although I appreciate the fact that we're relying on, shall we say, the expertise of our facilities plant manager, whatever Jim DeBell's title is, I think when we're talking numbers of this magnitude, that we kind of sort of have an obligation to open it as wide a field as possible. And of course, I'll be very interested to see what comes back when bids are open. But I will remind the board that in much the same manner that the board has no obligation to accept low bid, the board has also the discretion not to accept any bids at all and re-advertise. And I have a sneaking hunch that we might very well find ourselves ending up in that situation.
And that, David, that was another reason why I'd really like to bring it to Buildings and Grounds first, because I don't have all the answers. And I know you guys are more experienced at a lot of these things than maybe even myself. So together we can hopefully make the right decision on whoever comes in. So, or re-advertise, as you say. That's a great point.
Jack, have you got your hand up?
Yeah, just briefly, this is not an area where I feel like I can show up a whole lot of expertise because I don't have a whole lot. But I am curious about a couple of things. This type of work from the people I know that do this work professionally is that it really is a subset of general construction, that even really big construction companies that specialize in school renovation work tend to fob off HVAC to specialists. And that in many cases, there's a consulting engineer, something called a CCM, which is Certified Construction Manager, which does this specifically because it is considered rather engineering and fiscally the fiscal oversight is really important. And I am just, I recognize that this is one of a number of schools that are going to be doing this, but I do want to ask that as we go forward, we have somebody looking at building a spec that is not just our own internal people, and somebody that's developing a spec that aren't the people that built the system that didn't work very well the first time. And I just would encourage us to do that as part of the planning process, to see if there is a consulting engineer or somebody that can come in independently and look at this. Because while I admire Mr. DeBell, I'm going to guess he doesn't have a CCM, and I don't know a whole lot of people in Southern Vermont that do, but I certainly would like to have one of them connected to the project when it gets underway.
Absolutely.
Okay, I think you can finish up, John.
Okay, well, I can cover the Hvac later on, and I think that's all from me right now, but, there'll be more to follow as we move down the road and get the bids in and just keep moving with kids and keep moving in what we're doing. So, and if I think we're gonna have a couple in November, which is great, because then we can have a constant feedback and chime in. So
Okay.
I think it's great.
Thank you. Business office.
We don't have a lot. We just have audits going on. Still waiting to finalize everything with the auditors. We did submit all of our documents and reconciliations. So now we're just waiting them to let us know, when they're gonna give us our final reports. I did know that one of them was out sick, so I guess that maybe put a little hold on them. Other than that, we're working on presenting SU budget by Wednesday, so that way we could start giving final numbers to all of the schools. And I guess by next meeting of the high school, we should be able to go over the high school budget.
Okay, so it's changed a little bit since when I used to be that we had budget meetings starting in the middle of October, and we had at least one a month, and by December we were having 2 or 3 sometimes to get finalized, because we had an opportunity to really look through the budget and really try to help me understand what was in that budget and what it meant if, all the people that want to come in my office and chew on my ear about what we're doing wrong, because they never come and tell us what we're doing right. It made me feel better, because I had a better idea of being able to tell them. The last couple of years has been really rocky. It had nothing to do with you, but I'm sharing that with you because I would like to see a couple times where we had just a budget meeting where we could just really have a heart to heart on, what does this mean? John used some acronyms here that probably nobody knows what NEASC is. And I was gonna call him out, but I figured we'd let him have his report time, but so I don't have a problem with looking at the budget during the next school board meeting.
Okay.
But I'd really like to be able to schedule a few, even if we just showed up at the SU office, threw a pizza at the middle of the table, and we just were able to just go through it a little bit.
So we should be able to do that before the meeting.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's so much better, I think, for all of us involved if last year, I think that the budget we saw had fewer lines in it than my grocery list, and I really wondered what I was approving. And so I'd be able to like to see it.
So we should be able to set maybe the high school meeting, and then we should set one before that one that you could just come in and we could just sit with you and have a free review. Like we did with the other schools. The other school had like a preliminary budget where they sat and we had those discussions, so we should be able to do that.
Thank you.
We can do, John did put together a little slide presentation just with preliminary numbers like we've done at the other boards, if you want to throw it up
Okay,
here
yeah.
today. But I also know Jack has a question, so.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, the Westminster Athens Craftsmen have had 2 meetings on budgets already. We did sort of an envisioneering session where people talked about what they wanted to accomplish, whether it was fiscal savings or particular programs that they thought were sacred cows or not, and got some way of sort of driving what the budget priorities are, because we always look at things we'd like to do, look at the things that we can't, that really hit against fiscal constraints. And as Molly said, we did none of that last year. Frankly, we really haven't done a terribly good job for the last couple. And I would very much like us to start to schedule in November, if not weekly, close to it, meetings to get some of that out on the table, because I don't know what people want, what's important to them. And without that, we're essentially arguing over a number without being able to determine what that number accomplishes. And there really is no board input on priorities. If we're not careful, budgets can dictate policy, and that should never be the case. Policy should dictate budgets. But if boards don't articulate what's important to them, then they're essentially sitting as passengers on the train, and they're not really helping to manage any part of the process. So I'd like us to have this discussion tonight, but I wouldn't mind kind of getting into it and finding out with people what they care about. And I think that would help us a great deal.
Want to put this up there and go
So,
over it?
yeah, if you've got something that we can look at for a minute, why not?
I'm gonna try to figure out how it works. Ricky.
Ricky.
It's behind the scene.
I love having a Ricky.
No, it's like.
That's good to know.
There we go.
How do I get rid of this? No. All right. Let's just go to the first one. I don't know why I did that. All right. Okay.
All right, so again, this is what I put together. I looked at the kind of procedure that we were working on in a pre-presentation mode. I know we haven't had any meetings, which is kind of strange that we haven't had any yet. So it was kind of hard for me to really, I can make my own direction, but I want input from everybody, because this is not just for me, it's for everyone. Our projected enrollment, current is 312, projected is, it's going to be the same. We have 76 kids graduating, hopefully this year, and there are 80 plus students on the docket to come in. We will lose 1 or 2 along the way, but I don't see it falling below what we have moving on. So you want to go to the next one, Andrew? Okay, the current staffing, as you can look at, I don't need to read through them all unless anyone has questions about it. That hasn't changed at all, as far as I remember, for the last 2 or 3 years. We've added an ELA interventionist has been added, and that is through grant money, so that is not a direct draw on the budget. Our title math and our title English is grant funded too. Just looking to see what else is on there that might present the question.
Related services doesn't come out of your budget.
What's that?
The related service folks.
Right. A lot of the other services that we're waiting for our assessments are the only unknown factors right now for me, but again, that we know that they're going to come along. So that's like transportation, assessment for administration, for the head office, foods, the food services assessment. I'm trying to think, what's the other big one? Transportation and, the special ed services as well. So they're all pretty big, and I think Flora's getting those finalized or getting near finalized anyway. They're not quite ready yet. Is that right, Flora?
Yep.
Not quite ready yet. So once we have those, we'll have a final number. I think the stuff that we have control of, from what I see anyway, will have a bit of a saving this year, quite a bit of a saving. So the important thing for me, though, is to start, even though the state has put out the, what's it called again? The equalized pupil and the equalized pupil amount. What we haven't realized in the last two, or we have, but as Jack said, I think we've kind of just given the budget the one look over and said, okay, yeah, let's move on with that. Looks okay. We've actually been in the penalty phase in the last 2 years. And what that means is when you go over the average price per student is, and correct me if I'm wrong, that we pay, I think it's dollar for dollar. And what I want to, my immediate goals is to not have any, to not affect the services for students academically, and to get under that tariff. And now in reading the note that was sent out today, either the feds or our state have said that they're not going to adhere to, for financial year 22, which is this year, and financial year 23, they're going to waive the going over the threshold. But I still would like us to get back onto a steady ship to be under it and still provide a good quality education for our kids. So, next, you want to go to the next slide?
Yep, I'm on the next slide.
Oh, you are, sorry. So capital improvements, again, I've left it on there because I guess I'm just the eternal optimist. Almost like girls soccer making the playoffs today, when we were in 17th place yesterday and we got into the playoffs. There's definitely something good going on up there. Driveway and parking lot replacement. We've had a lot of the work done for that, and it didn't get on the boat for whatever reason, and we kind of just left it. But I think if we have the opportunity to get it through ESSA, that would be good. It doesn't have to be the first priority. HVAC upgrades, I really hope that we get on as quick as we can, and we find an engineer and we get the specs done and we get working on that as Mr. Terry said, like January 1 would be great. I don't know if that can happen, but it would be awesome. Also, Andy put in SO2 our electric circuit replacement. Again, we have no word whether we're getting it back or not. But I think this is an important thing for us to get done, hopefully through ESSA, but definitely to get done, because our electricity costs through not being able to use our generator, which is in very good shape, by the way, is costing us every month. And if you want to figure, I'm putting $2,000 to $3,000 a month on that. So that I don't know exactly, but I'm sure I can find you it. Auditorium seating and carpeting. I'd like us to look at that for a future project, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when I talk about the Hvac Foundation, the Hvac Foundation and our last donation. And for the following year, I've had a letter from a local resident who didn't leave their details in who to contact or anything. It's kind of almost anonymous, really. But they had complained about tennis court upgrade and how we'll let the tennis courts go and we focus only on football and other things. And again, that was a point made by an individual, and I have to listen to all points. And that was on my, I wish I could have I could speak to that person. Hopefully I can. If you're out there, if you'd like to call me, I'd love to talk to you. That is on our mind. That's on our plan. We want to upgrade the tennis courts. And we've even put, a total replacement of 240,000 is replacing the whole thing. Do I think we're going to get that? Probably not, but we can certainly make them safe and good to play on. And then track replacement through ESSER. I'd love us to be able to get that on there if we can, even just to recover it. And the roof replacement, as we discussed in our last buildings and grounds, and hopefully by Wednesday, we'll have a lot more of the essential information about the roof that we can focus on and talk about in that subcommittee. So to move forward. So that's all my hopes for the next few years.
If I could just interject.
Sure, yeah.
Just so everyone is very, very clear about the ESSER funds. The ESSER funds have to be tied to COVID-related recovery and learning of students. And so while, I think people see it as and I see this around the whole SU, people see it as this big bag of money and everyone has their pet projects that they want to take in there. It's very controlled, and that's the reason why, Mr. Terry, where all these checks and balances are kind of out there, so that we can put all of these in there. What will get conceptually approved and what won't get approved is where that is. So, but I know Jack's got his hand up. Okay.
Go ahead, Jack.
All right.
Yeah, well, actually, Andy took the words out of my mouth. A couple things about ESSER is that there's a requirement that it have a safety and health and COVID-related application. And some things that we put off for years, like the driveway, it's going to be pretty hard to argue that's an ESSER thing. This is not an excuse to put in our wish list of things that we have to fix as a part of our regularly obligated expenditures to keep the facilities sound. It is money for health and safety, and it is money that frankly competes with other districts in RSU. There is a bolus of money, but it's really called jump ball in terms of where it goes. And the first call for that money is going to be across the SU and for projects that are health and safety related, like ventilation and circulation issues. And we need to be careful about throwing things in that frankly will never get approved and shouldn't. We have things that we need to fix that are part of our regularly scheduled maintenance. That's we need to, if we have to float a bond, we float a bond, but they're not ESSER appropriate. We shouldn't fool ourselves in thinking that they're going to be. I just also want to push back, if you don't mind my doing so, on some of the numbers that we're hearing here. Yes, 312 is a nice estimate, but we've had ambitious estimates of the attendance in the past, and we've not hit those. And we assumed that there would be money coming in to cover those headcounts, and those headcounts didn't materialize. And even now, even if we have a stable year this coming year, we're still going to be penalized because it's a sliding average. So that 312 this year means that average is still dropping from that 337 and that 352 that we argued not that many years ago. So we have an obligation to bear in mind that we have 66-ish employees in the high school, and we are going to have a headcount, as far as the state's concerned, an averaging headcount that will be lower than it was last year, because you do a 3-year average. And if we don't have budgets that reflect that lower amount of money that comes in from the state, our headcount, our cost per student is going to go up. And even if we're not penalized this year, we're making almost inevitable a penalty when things change going forward. I just want to really emphasize that we be disciplined and think about making certain that things that we need to fix as far as facilities are concerned are laid out and done, because part of the reason why there's such a large pile is because we've deferred them for the better part of 10 years in some cases. And the things that, and our staffing, quite candidly, is significantly higher than a lot of our surrounding districts with the same number of people in them. And we need to take a very hard look at that stuff, because it's an unsustainable course. So you heard from the budget hawk.
Okay.
Technology, John.
Technology update, yes. Once the technology has been planned through our technology assessments, we'll maintain our one-to-one Chromebooks and the bandwidth service to keep our staff and students high-speed internet. Some ESSER money has and will be spent on Promethean boards for classrooms, computers, iPads, and the necessary equipment. So again, we've spent some. I think there's some planned for the future. I know in the ESSER 2, we've looked at a lot of different things, and there was some things in there. So I feel we're in a fairly good place there, really. So I'm not worried at all about that. Budget highlights. Again, staying within our means. Initial target is level funded while staying below the excess spending threshold and minimizing the impact on the taxpayer. First off, and Jack, I think you had mentioned this earlier in one of the other meetings, that inflation is at over 5%. So that's going to have a small impact on us, certainly, no matter what we do. And I think we should maximize the support and the funding through grants, donations, all the COVID money we get for COVID stuff. If we can put that back in and have it there, it's going to lower our cost. Another one that I didn't put in there that I just brought to mind there, we have one student from the Two Rivers district of Black River that the Black River closed, and those students are tuition students for high school. We have one here, so I'm not sure what the rate is, but it's going to be probably 19,000 that we're getting income there. I have a great relationship with the student and the family, and I said, hey, anybody else want to come to BF? So, because if we were to get 10 of those students, it's all revenue. It's paying attention to business and also giving kids a good education that they might not get at Black River, or they might not get at Green Mountain. They'll get one here. So I believe in what we do, and I believe in collectively what we do, all of us, board, staff, support staff, everyone, administration, the whole lot. So that's another area that is well untapped. So it has twofold there. It increases your student numbers and gets your revenue. So and miscellaneous. One challenging issue is budget process. The fact that comparisons to I think Jack, you alluded to this kind of, the fact that comparisons to the previous full year of spending will not be helpful, because for the past, running nearly a full year of hybrid operations last year, getting kids back, I think it was the end of March, we sort of had at least a 4-day week. And we got into a 5-day week, I believe, by the end of April. And having some expenses covered by COVID funds, it's going to make targeting plans for the future a little bit more difficult, but not tough. And I just put in the quote there, little research I did, because I want to quantify it where I found it. So the rate of inflation right now is 5.4%. So, budget saving, whoops. Sorry, I keep forgetting you're controlling yours. I'm going, why isn't that going up there? Budget savings. One major area right off the bat, we've got a school counselor retiring. So we're not going to replace the school counselor. We've spoken to our other counselors, and they're stepping up, and they're going to take on the roles. So that, again, that's helpful staffing wise. It's helpful budget wise, and most importantly, they don't believe the kids will suffer. That's the most important point, okay? And we'd be able to save on improvements and replacing a plant, machinery, technology, et cetera, through some of the ESSER and some of the grants that we've been getting. So, and that's it. And again, we've had any questions. I really want us to get going and meet as a budget committee, because I think having the committee and having discussions and thrashing things out and getting it out on the table will be great, because we'll have more than just one opinion to everything. So, and that was 7E that we did earlier. So,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Any questions for Flora? Looks like you're off to look pretty easy tonight, Flora.
One question, any idea as far as your thinking when the audits will be done? Because I know we wanted them done in September, so we're still.
No.
Well,
We
the board
started
did,
them in
the board
September.
did, so that we could start on budgets in October. That was what we talked about last spring. So I'm just trying to figure out what you think will
So,
be done.
the calendar, stated that September, we were starting, budgets with the principals. October, which is the current month that we will start, audits, so they could finalize it by first, second week of November. And then, in between, we were starting as well the review with the boards of the budgets. Now, honestly, their deadlines, according to the contract that we have with them, will be by mid-November. They should have finalized the audits for us. As for our end in the office, we have submitted everything to them, so it is on their side to do their reviews. Like I said, I'll follow up with them by next week, because this is the last week of the month. So giving them that opportunity to finalize their reviews, so that way we know when we start receiving at least a draft of the audits.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome.
And we're not waiting for them anyway on budget, so that doesn't really affect that.
No, we
but
started
I just was
already.
wondering as far as projection. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Okay, committees, building and grounds update. I don't know if I really have an update. We're working pretty hard at trying to get this HVAC bid taken care of. We have a meeting scheduled for the 4th of November that I think will give us a little enlightenment on, what we're looking for. Jason, do you have anything you want to put on building and grounds? I don't really have much to really report at this point. The other thing that under committees, I don't see it, and I don't think she's here. WNESU report, but I don't see that she is, our new chair is here. Is that correct? Right. She's not on there, right?
Nope.
I can see everyone that's on there, okay. So there's no report from WNESU. Unfinished business for discussion or action, recap of vaccination rate. I think we've already done that, but you want to just run us through those numbers? How many teachers? Percentage?
I can give you that. So right now, the percentage rate for teachers is 75% for the high school.
Okay.
And that is, let me clarify that. That is those teachers who have shown us proof.
Yeah.
Through a vaccination card, because there are some staff members who may be vaccinated, but have not, for whatever reason, either they choose not to or whatever, haven't shared with us a copy of their card in some meetings.
And kids are 28%, is that what I remember?
Kids are at, well, again, the official card, staff are, at a verbal, staff are 96% in this building, and they're 75 in a showing rate. Kids are 28.8 in a showing. Again, I'm gonna go back and I can report that out at the next meeting, but I wanna go back to a lot of the families that I've spoke to that have said yeah, my kid's vaxxed. And I said, okay, can you send me the card? And haven't. But I'd like to look at the data of the verbal versus what we actually have on hand, because I think it's useful to have that information, because I was surprised how many kids were vaccinated but weren't on our 88 that are already in. So
Until they're willing to give it to us, it's
yeah,
not.
that's true.
We can speculate all we want.
Yes, no, you're right.
But, any questions on vaccination rate? Update on multi-district weighted system. Who's got that?
Oh, yeah, Molly, I think I got that one.
Okay.
And there was a question raised as to what's in it for BFUHS in terms of supporting the effort to get an equitable student weighting formula. And I'm going to try to answer this in fairly succinct bullet points here. The last page of the Bellows Falls Union High School annual report has a document called 3-year comparisons. The format is provided by the Agency of Education. And there is a very interesting section which is called Ed Spending by Equalized Pupil. And on line 12 for fiscal year 21, we have a calculation for our full-time equivalents. And that calculation is 385.98 FTEs in Bellows Falls Union High School. And I realize we've just been kicking around the actual population number of 312 students, but here's the difference. The 385.98 FTE are our share of a weighted formula all the way across the state of Vermont, which determines to what degree we are supported in our efforts to educate kids. It's line 12 in that report, okay? You skip down to line 23, and there's a figure called excess spending per pupil over the threshold. And in fiscal year 21, that's the year we just ended, that excess spending was $832 per student. And the math is this. For every dollar, which was $321,135.36, we were over the excess spending threshold. We kicked dollar for dollar the same amount of money over to the Department of Taxes. And I think that that is a profligate waste of money. Now, here's where things start to get interesting, okay? For fiscal year 21-22, which is the year we're operating in now, our FTEs had dropped to 375.8, which is very broadly speaking, 10 fewer students. And in a way, we're fortunate because our excess spending per pupil also dropped to $620.48. Multiply 375.8 full-time equivalents by $620.48, and you come up with a number which is $233,176.38. But we're not paying it. And the reason that we're not paying it is that through the hard work of the Coalition for Vermont Student Equity, when Act 59 was passed out of the legislature this past May, there was a moratorium on the excess spending penalty for the 21-22 and 22-23 fiscal school years. And I'm going to tell you why that happened. And the reason that happened is this. The school board members who got together to try to do something about it, and bear in mind the fact that the Act 173 student weights would add up to around $1 million tax hit across Wyndham Northeast. Those boards needed to do something and quickly. I'm going to tell you what happened. In February, because that entity was still ad hoc and had not yet become a 501c3, a lobbyist was still hired. And I hired the lobbyist, Maggie Lenz, who worked for Leonine Public Affairs directly. Maggie Lenz, for the months of February, March, and April, worked for me. She worked for David Clark, and I paid for it, okay? And it is a direct result of Maggie Lenz's work in the legislature that the $233,176 of profligate and reckless spending that Principal Hosden committed us to got abated, okay? Now, here's the question. What is a reasonable number for, and I appreciate there's a lot of interesting stuff on the tables, and I get that clearly. I think that what's a reasonable number is for the school districts in Wyndham Northeast, Union High School District 27, Wyndham Northeast Union Elementary District, and Rockingham School District to match my contributions, which directly affected the outcome in creating Act 59. And what that means is that those three entities, and maybe you can convince the WNESU to pony up some dough, which would lessen the local impacts, but we really should be coming up with about $16,000 to support continuing efforts to try to mitigate the pernicious weighting formula that we were handed under Act 173. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. There was also from Act 59 a task force created to look at those weights. Accurate and correct weighting had already been established by a blue ribbon commission of the Vermont legislature, and they found that many of those weights, like a 1.25 FTE for a SPED kid, really would have been a 3.0. And if those weights were adopted, we would have more equitable funding, and we would not be looking at the kind of excess spending penalty money that we've gotten ourselves into here. But there's a wrinkle, and the wrinkle is this. If an equitable weighting formula is adopted, there will be winners and there will be losers. And the big winners will be the high poverty, high needs district, like Bellows Falls Union High School and most of Wyndham Northeast. And the losers will be districts like Stowe and Middlebury, where they'll have to pony up more money under a recalculated student weighting formula. Last Thursday night, we had two reps in the room. We had Representative Emily Kornheiser, who's Brattleboro, and we had Senator Ruth Hardy, who represents Middlebury. And a very interesting conversation we had. They're both chairs of the task force on student weighting. Senator Hardy is absolutely gung-ho to move away from an equitable weighting formula for ESL kids, or English language learners, as it's known now. And there's actually at least one school district in Vermont, which is minority ELL, which is Winooski. And what she's proposing instead is that we create categorical grants to cover ELL population. I think that's just the first shoe falling, and the second one will fall when Senator Hardy comes out in favor of categorical grants to cover the discrepancies in SPED funding. Now, here's why it matters. Under the weighting formula, there would be no new taxation. The tax burden would simply be more equitably distributed across the school districts in Vermont, just as envisioned under the Brigham decision, which begat Act 60. However, if we move to categorical aid, that fundamental funding inequity will simply be ignored, and we will have new taxes because grants come from taxes. Adjust the weighting formula, no new taxes. Pay for it out of categorical grants, new taxes, okay? It's not an equitable way to solve a fundamental problem that we have in providing for our high needs student populations. I am going to suggest to Bellows Falls Union High School that it would be appropriate as soon as possible to pony up $5,000 toward the efforts of the Coalition for Vermont Student Equity. Thank you, Molly.
Jack?
One of the things that people have said is, what is the real cost that we bear as a high school, say, with this change in formulas? And I'm going to do some very rough math because that's what you do in these cases. Now, we heard tonight that we have a student population of 312, more or less. That's what we're anticipating. We've also heard that according to the present formula, we weight out at 398. Do the math. There's an 86 phantom count, right? 86 students that don't really exist, but by and large,
375.
pardon me,
375.
375. Thank you. Let's change that to 375. Still in all, that still works out to 60 plus additional students that we don't really have. So when you look at that 60, what is it? Where is it going? Now we know, again, very crude math, that roughly a third of our kids have some sort of special needs or additional support services required. So if we take that 60 phantom kids and we allocate it across 100 students, that means our real weighting, our internal weighting for those kids, what it costs to service them, is really about 1.6. That if you were putting this into the system and using a state formula and said, well, what does it really cost? It would be, for those coded kids, about a 1.6. Now, David, what is the formula that the state is talking about here? Is it 1.3? Am I right on that? Is that what my recollection is?
We're right around 1.25, 1.3 FTE for poverty, ELL, and special ed.
So there you go. So now we've got a difference. They want to compensate us at 1.3, but our real cost is 1.6. So let's do that. So they were saying we've got 60 kids that are phantom kids here. They're willing to pay 30 for 30 of them, but that's 30 times $20,000. So that's $600,000. And now you get a rough idea as to what the hit this high school would take under the formula that the state is proposing. That's the hit that this high school would, again, crude math, that would suffer if 173 is put in place as it was originally proposed. Now that money is not going to disappear. It's going to go to places where they don't have big sped counts. It's going to go to places like Stowe, and go to places like South Burlington, who don't need it. But that's what we're really talking about, is an income transfer from places that are poor, places that have a lot of rental housing, places where there's a transient population, where there are educational casualties, to places that do not suffer from those burdens. And I just want people to understand, when we talk about, how much money you want, David? 16,000? The 16,000 to try to recover some portion of 600,000 a year. And I think that's a reasonable investment if we can get even part of that money pulled back and have the weighting formula made to conform to the actual costs that will be on this district to educate those kids.
So that is the update on the multi-district weighted system.
Can I ask one more question? Can I ask one question?
Absolutely.
Sorry. David, you know the weighting formula, whatever it is, it's always a magical number that not many people know, but that applies to all schools in Vermont once they come to that figure, is that correct? That's what I'm hearing. I just want to be clear on that point. You know, so the richer schools, the less poverty schools, they work on the same index to calculate their equalized cost per pupil? Or does that vary from school to?
John, yes, that's correct. And here's the rub. The rub is this. Act 173 moves from a reimbursement model for special education to a block grant. And that block grant is based on your total population. So in Wyndham Northeast, where we got a 30% sped count, we're going to be making up the difference. In Stowe, where they got a 5% sped count, guess what? We just subsidize their taxes. That's how it works.
I agree. Thank you. That's awesome.
Does anyone have any other questions? So C is donations to Coalition for Vermont Student Equity. And that is what David has just spoken about and Jack has spoken about. What I have just heard is that David is requesting that as a district, we donate $16,000. He is
three different
suggesting,
figures, Molly.
I'm sorry?
I've heard three different figures.
Okay, so let me, because I kind of have two, so, he has suggested that the high school do $5,000. When I look at 16, the first thing I think of is we divide that by 4, and I'm not the smartest girl on the block, but that comes out to $4,000 if we are all going to do this. So before we have a motion, I guess I would like to hear from John or Flora or Andy, somebody tell me, where does this money come from? I mean, we just talk about budgets and where money comes from, and I'm not saying I'm for or against this, I'm an open book when it comes to this stuff. I don't believe that there's any hid up money, and if there is, I'm ashamed of myself for letting that happen, and where does that come from?
Molly, I'm going to beg your indulgence here.
David, it's my turn right now. Don't do that, please. So I'm not looking, I just want, you're the budget lady. Where does that come from?
If the budget is approved, it comes from the budget that has already the principal approved. He will have to cut down lines
Okay,
if he doesn't want to overspend.
well, we don't want to overspend. That doesn't make any sense.
So is it coming out of, do we want it now or ASAP, David, right?
John, you budgeted for $232,000 in excess spending. I got you out of it. I'm asking $5.
Yeah, but you want it now.
$232,000 you budgeted that you're not spending. Pony up $5.
No, Dave, I'm all for it. I'm asking, is it now or the FY23?
He wants it now.
Wants it now, okay.
Good. So essentially what Flora, I agree with Flora that what would happen is if this board chose to come up with that money, then we would have to take it out of the established budget already. Somewhere. And as David said, if we haven't spent the money, I mean, without digging through the numbers, David, I'm not disputing what you're saying, David. I'm just saying you'd have to find the money within your budget, so.
Because we already assess all the towns, we're not gonna assess more of the towns. We just need to be cautious what we're spending. So that way we don't just go over budget.
And is the money paying you back, David, or going somewhere else?
I donated it, Molly. It's going to the coalition to continue the hard work. A lot of pushback in Montpelier about economic fairness.
Jack?
I just want to make a math correction here. There are roughly 1,000 kids in the combined SU. We cover about a third of them. So if you need $16,000, we need to pony up about a third of it. We don't divide it into quarters because if you're counting it in quarters, Grafton, Vermont, with its 40 students, should pay the same amount as the high school with 300. And that seems a little like not what we're trying to do here. But I do think that, guys, we're talking about an investment of $5,000, more or less, to save $600,000 a year for the next 10 years. So basically, think $6 million if we do federal math type budget math. And I just don't know. I don't know how we fail to invest in something that can generate that kind of return on investment. There's nothing that we're doing this year that will generate that kind of return for taxpayers. And I just sort of beg people to bear that.
Yeah, you guys are, the two of you are getting very defensive, and all I'm trying to do is get the facts on the table before we do something. That's all I want. I just want to get the facts out there.
No issues. No issues.
So just so you have a different way of doing it, but I want the public and all the other members to understand what we're doing here. Priscilla.
I'm concerned that we have a lot of unknowns out there right now, a lot of possibilities as far as spending this year that we are just not aware of. It's fairly early in the year. We haven't looked at the budget for next year. We haven't got the audit back to know where we stand from last year to see on that. And, I think that before we spend additional money, we absolutely need to know where our audit is. We also need to know where we're going. We're negotiating right now contracts with all of our staff. There's all kinds of issues out there that we don't know. And so to just blanketly spend money without knowing some of these other issues is a concern for me.
Okay, so sorry, but I had to get some of that out in the open, and I think I always kind of rub David the wrong way sometimes, but it's only because he uses a lot bigger words and explains things where I really just want, if anybody's logged in here, they just get a feel for what we're doing. I appreciate all the hard work you've done, David. I just wanted to make sure that we were getting it, getting it to the point where people understood it. And I think what we understand right now is, and Deb, I see your hand, that right now, if this passes, it could cost our school about $600,000 more a year. David is asking for us to help with this. Andy has given me a figure on his phone of $5,280 to.
And that's taking the 16,000 and doing it by a third of what Jack has
So
said.
if we, so what they're asking is that we basically find a way to take that out of your budget you have right now and help support this. And those are the real facts. That's the simplest I can explain it from what I understand from listening about this conversation now for probably 3 or 4 months. My fault is probably dragged on so bad because I didn't understand it. And I think I finally do, and maybe I was the one holding it up. But I just had a hard time understanding why or what we were doing. And so, okay, my head's finally wrapped around it. David, I'm sorry I got loud with you, but I was having a hard time understanding and what we were doing. And I felt like I had to be on the defense just to get the answers. And so my apologies, because I've tried to be way more mature than that in the last few years of my life and not do that. So I understand now. I hope that the other board members at least understand what I understand. And Deb, right, you had your hand up. Thank you. And then I'll get you, David.
Thank you. I don't want to take much time with this. I just want to be clear on 2 things. This is asking the high school to pass a motion for 5,000, which I'm not sure who it's being made out to. Is it being made out to David Clark or someone else? That's a two-part question. The other part is, will the Rockingham School District, Westminster, all the additional schools to be asked to contribute some portion of this? Is this just, so the SU won't see this? This is going to go straight to each of the school districts. I'm understanding if someone could answer that question. And the other part I asked, who's being paid here? I'm good with it. I'd like to save $600,000. I'm greatly concerned about what's happening. I just want to be clear on where it's going and if the other schools are going to be contributing as well, the districts thing.
Thank you, Deb. That's been my question all along, and I think that's why I've struggled with this so long, is I finally understand tonight that the check is going to be made to the coalition, and that yes, all the other school boards are gonna be asked for some sort of donation. And when I first heard it, I was thinking SU too, but it doesn't make sense for SU to do it because it really should be at the school board level, not the WNSU. So I feel pretty powerful. I think I had the answers to all your questions. David, you're next.
Molly, one correction. Act 173 has passed. It's the law. The weightings have not, the block grant reimbursement has not been implemented, okay? If we do not successfully knock it down, we're gonna get clocked big time. Jack Bauer gave you the numbers. I'm trying to make the point that after 1 year where we paid a huge amount of money in excess spending penalty, and another year where we budgeted to pay a huge amount of money in excess spending penalty, which the coalition got abated, I think we can afford it. But no, Act 173 is the law. They simply held off on the implementation of the block grants, and we got not a lot of time to do something about it.
Thank you. Ian?
So I just want to confirm that basically what we're doing is to direct the principal to pay this money out to the coalition, or are we just, how does that work? Because we're asking to basically dip into a budget that has already been approved and voted on.
That is correct.
Okay, well, I'm going to make a motion to direct the principal to pay $5,280 to the Equity Coalition. I can't remember the exact name.
Coalition for Vermont Student Equity.
Thank you. And I guess that's all I need to say, right? Is there any other piece to that motion? I think that's about it.
That's it. So there's a motion on the table. Is there any more discussion? Yes.
Just a quick one. Well, I know that I have $2,000 professional development money, and I would certainly like to take that as part of it, because I don't need it this year because I just got relicensed. So I'd like to chip that in if I could, so as part of it, or suggest that I do that. So.
Thank you, John. I think that probably once you and Flora get together, hopefully you can figure out how to make it work. Priscilla, you all set?
Yeah, I just wish I would like to see the audit first is my problem. To see where we stand, because I'd like more information.
Anyone else have any other questions? All right, I've gone through 3 pages of notes here. Get back to my roll call.
I do appreciate John.
Well, that is budget.
So there is a motion on the table right now to have a check sent to the Coalition for Vermont Student Equity for $5,280. And all those in favor, I'm on a roll call. Deb?
Aye, and thank you, Mr. Broadley.
Margot?
Aye.
David?
Molly, I'm respectfully abstaining.
Brenda?
Aye.
Priscilla?
I'm going to abstain.
Jason,
Aye.
Ian,
Aye.
Jack,
I'm not going to abstain. Aye.
6-4 and 2 abstain. Motion passes. Okay. John, I think this is you, update on Haber
Okay.
grant.
Yes,
So that was in our packet
that was there.
with the principal report.
Yeah. So the, oh, wait a minute. Okay, just to answer some of the individual points, in talking with Mr. Olson to find out a bit more to begin with, a cover letter and acceptance letter were not written. It was all done through email and telephonic correspondence between him and the financial representative of Maureen Haber, who is a former student of many years ago, who had not a lot of money when she was going through school and came into a lot of money and loves Bellows Falls Union High School. I reached out to the representative, and actually I managed to have a conversation with her this morning. Her name is Carolyn, I forgot her last name. Oh, it's irrelevant anyway, Carolyn. And I wanted to update her, as the board want to know as well. I really wanted to update and say, hey, thank you for the $250,000 that you gave to us back on November 25th, I believe it was, when it was accepted. And so far we've spent $13,760 of this donation on mostly online courses and some electronics. I believe Promethean board and some other things were bought for financial literacy. And again, it's towards, online is towards student progress, towards a high school diploma. I confirmed that with her. The 4 areas that we passed it on were financial literacy, online coursework of any kind, study of economics, study of science. And I know that Mr. Murphy, and he can probably speak a little bit better than it to me, but I'm going to keep going for now, is we're beginning to implement it. And in talking with Carolyn today, I expressed to her what we've used, what our plans are. We have at the moment one financial literacy course. And she asked me, well, what are you looking to do? How are you looking to undertake this challenge? And I just said, like I put in our spec that Mr. Murphy has been working on for the last year and a half, is we want to come up with an all-round course that is in sections and require that of our juniors or seniors to graduate in financial literacy, global citizenship, health 2, and media literacy. And the health 2 part, we already have that as a graduation requirement, so that part may be easy to intertwine. And the plan, again, we're going to develop that over the next few years, and we're really going to have to go a little bit slower than we wanted, because we want to make sure students are at a right place to learn, but not put the brakes on it. And therefore the goal in financial literacy as well is to have that as a half credit on our graduation requirements, which again, we'll meet about that in policies and add that on to the graduation requirement, hopefully, if the board would like to do that. Carolyn went on further to say today, hey, Maureen loves the high school. And she asked me if I could dream, and I could dream big. And I said, hey, there's not a bigger dreamer around. I can certainly do that. And she wants me and us, not just me, but all of us, to put our heads together, and no project is too big. And really, she didn't quantify that. As far as I know, this lady has millions and millions of dollars and she loves Bellows Falls Union High School. So I say that's a good combination to start with. So, so again, that's for the near future, because I would like to, I'm going to schedule at least a monthly meeting with her just to give her updates on how we're doing with it, and hopefully move forward with our relationship and find other ways that we can support our kids without putting more burden on the taxpayer. So
I'm really glad to hear that you're building a relationship with her, because I haven't heard that in a lot of other conversations about this. So, David, do you have your hand up?
I do have my hand up, Molly. And what I want to say is this: if you're going to build a continuing relationship with her, why don't you ask her to pave the high school driveway? I find it just incomprehensible that we've received a $250,000 grant that has absolutely no cover documents and no correspondence trail. That dog doesn't hunt. And I really think that we have an obligation to have a look at Principal Hodgson's email trail, if in fact there is one. And I want to make a point here. $250,000 grant, of which $13,760 has been expended. I asked for a report on that, probably 6 months ago. And it was very interesting. We spent it on stuff like Brigham Young University online courses, which we had hitherto always paid out of our regular budget as a regular expense of this school. And bluntly, what that means is that Principal Hodgson, hear me clearly, was using Haber as a slush fund. And I have not a good feeling about the notion that we're going to use Haber for a slush fund when, just to cite, for instance, Haber could have been used to actually do some serious work on distance learning, so we didn't end up with quite the outcomes that we did end up when we actually found ourselves in a distance learning situation, which we were completely unprepared for, but didn't need to be. So yes, I certainly would encourage John broadly to cultivate a relationship. However, I think we really need to have some pretty, shall we say, detailed plans on paper as to how we're going to use Haber money instead of simply throwing it at problems where we're going to use it to plug gaps in the budget. I really think that that's an absolute short-sighted approach, which is extremely unprofessional.
Absolutely.
David, I just want to just clarify. It sounded like you said Principal Haas, and you're referring to Principal Hodgson, correct?
Yes.
Because I just want to make sure I haven't been the principal of the high school, but it sounded like that way to me, and I just want to make sure that's clear.
I've done that before.
8:30 at night, Hodgson and Haas can sound the same, but I am referring to former principal Christopher Hodgson, 2021's Vermont Principal of the Year, according to the VPA.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, John. I think that it's, of all the times that's been on the agenda, it's the first time that, we're getting a handle on it and we're understanding it, and we're gonna start tracking it better and do with this what this,
And there will be a
respect
plan
what
and-
this lady is, respect what she wants too, to a certain point. I mean,
And anything I do in the future, I will ensure that we get documentation of it in an official manner, because Carolyn's she's in financial management, and I didn't actually ask her because I thought that might have been rude, saying, hey, why didn't you give us paperwork on it when they're willing to give us the money? But I will make sure that gets done in the future. And I think I'm sensing a good relationship already. And a thankful one, and they appreciate that.
Well,
so
but that one is in for a win for you. We've already done 7E, budget discussion review. We're gonna move on to 8, new business for discussion or action. Retirement incentive approval. So that is where it got put. Priscilla? So Priscilla was.
No, I think that's approving the request for the incentive by a teacher that may not want
Oh,
the name put out
okay.
there.
Perfect. So then I don't know, executive session if needed. Help me out, Andy.
I think we do need executive session.
Okay. So we're gonna move 8A to executive. What about memorandum of understanding? I had that. That was sent to us, right? Here it is.
Yep.
It wouldn't hurt to do a brief discussion in executive session.
For this also?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think for all of that,
Okay.
for everything under 8.
All right, so let's move all of 8 into executive session, but let's not leave the fun here yet. Date of next meeting is November 8th. Any agenda items, please email me. Jason Terry gets the star for that. Thank you very much. It just makes it so much easier. There's so much going on, and I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, I got so much going on in my paid life that, when I open up my phone at 10 o'clock at night and see that, I'm like, all right, thank you very much. Now we got started here. So don't hesitate to throw something at me. It's great to have that. Director's comments. I'm gonna start with Deb. Deb, do you have director's comments?
Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I couldn't find my mouse to open up my mic. I just want to let everyone know, of course, Sunday is trick or treating. Everyone please be safe and be careful, dress warm. Try to do as much safe distancing as possible and masking, which is usually natural for Halloween. And also there'll be a chili chowder cook-off in Bellows Falls on Saturday from 11 to 3 p.m. A lot of the businesses are sponsoring their version of their best chowders and chilies, and it's another way to stay warm on a cold, which will probably be a cold day. Thanks, that's it.
Thank you. Margot?
No comments this evening.
David?
Well, thank you, Molly, but I think the board's heard plenty enough from me tonight.
Brenda?
No.
Priscilla?
Yeah, I think we need to get the monthly expense reports reinstated that we used to be getting. For example, now that, we just put in an extra expense for the coalition that we did not look at any auditing first or any of that stuff. So I really think that it's very important that these things be out there so that we can see them, especially with a lot of unknowns that are coming up here in the next months.
Jason?
Also, when I
Sorry, Jason, not
Sorry.
you yet.
Gonna interrupt you, Jason. Also, I'm pleased to see that the COVID rules are being relaxed a little bit at the state as far as outside type activities and situations like on the buses, so that maybe we won't be identifying quite as many direct contacts and that kind of thing in the near future here to keep our students in school.
Jason?
Thank you, Molly. I really think that we have a lot of opportunities to do better in our school. I think our school is, it's very well known, obviously, in the community, big employer in the community. And I challenge Mr. Brunley, Mr. Murphy, Mr. Haas, and everyone here to get enrollment to go up, because that is the answer to a lot of our problems. More people move into town, the less burden on the taxpayers and, all of that. And having a great school helps draw people in, and that's always the answer. The answer is always in business to get more customers. And I want to be forward thinking on that, and I also challenge you guys also, as I said before, I want to be better than 16, and continue to improve on that, continue to push, hold everyone accountable, and lastly, hopefully the town and the community and everyone here, we have a lot of great student athletes that are participating this week in playoffs. Field hockey girls team, #1 in the state. Great coaches there. Football team, #1 in the state, in my opinion. I think they could beat any Division I team by 30 points. And, they're doing great. Soccer playoffs are this week, cross country. So support those kids because they're really working hard at school and it's a lot of work coming home late and then doing homework and then, all this stuff they have to do with masking and stuff. It's not easy. So support those guys and keep encouraging them and, get some more people to come to school. Thank you.
Ian,
No, I'm good, thanks.
Jack,
Just a couple points mostly for future discussion. We've talked a bit about budgets. When you make budget changes, you have to figure out what programmatic changes you're going to make those budget changes possible. And I hope that in a future discussion, we can talk about maintenance and whether or not maintenance should be moved to the SU level, because that's a way to save money. A second way to save money is to start to look at remote instruction. We've talked about this for a very long time. Now, a lot of our kids now have experience with 100% remote instruction, but we still have problems supporting things like calculus, some of our science courses on more than a semi-annual basis. We really should talk about setting a goal for remote instruction. It's the fastest way to both improve the quality of the programming and to save money. So that's budgeting. We had an entire meeting without discussing the fact that we have had by far more cases of COVID and COVID scares than we've had at any point prior to this, and yet our vaccination rates, our reported ones, are low, and we keep hearing reports in the community that kids that have been sent home quarantining are hanging out with their friends, and that's not how you support a quarantine. We need to make certain that kids who are sent home know that they're supposed to be home. They're not supposed to be hanging out with vaccinated or unvaccinated kids that are in school or not in school. We're not really doing a lot to encourage kids to, besides feeling very helpless about the lack of reporting. It would be a useful thing for a future meeting to discuss whether vaccination requirements should be a requirement to play varsity sports, or to be part of our theater program, or to be part of our band. A lot of other schools are doing it. I hope that we consider it, but these are some items that we can discuss that will both save us money and reduce our infection rates. And I hope they'll be atop of the agenda next time we meet. And I'll send the list to you, Molly, just to make certain that they are.
thank you. So I've thought today of, and all the other things I do. We're pretty lucky bunch. We have, and it's not all about sport, but this week it's about sports. I mean, we put on some great plays and our bands, and all of our kids are, as far as I'm concerned, great kids. But I'm not from Bellows Falls. Anybody would tell you that knows me, because I was from the other side of the river. But I've been here for 32 years, and I put a little girl through the whole school system, and it was a great experience. And when I think about this week, my first question to our principal is, where do you want me? Where does a dog need to be this weekend? And it's really, as hard as we all work and we work, we all want to do what's right. And, we're all on this board because we want to try to make a difference. But as a community, I have never seen where the community just comes together for the kids. And it's really something really cool to be proud of. And so, you you got a huge Friday coming up here. And, I hope that we have to call Wyndham County Sheriff to direct traffic at the bottom of the hill because, it's huge for our school. We got a little school, but our community is big. The support and the people that support everything that goes on in it's gonna go quick, isn't it, John? In, 7 or 8 hours, there's gonna be a lot going on here. And, I just hope that any community member that, has some time and can come down and cheer everybody on because, it's pretty neat to be part of. I came down to the field Saturday afternoon and they were having 2 senior games, field hockey and girls soccer, and it was packed. The parking lot was packed, and they were starting to park way out here where the kids park, and I'm pretty proud to be part of that. I don't have a kid in the system right now, but it doesn't matter if you've got, and when I look around, there's a lot of people who are out there that didn't have a little kid running around. They were just there because it's pretty cool to watch everybody's kids succeed. So, go Terriers, bring me home some state titles. Let's get some banners hung in the gym. And let's get a motion to go to executive session.
Okay, so moved in order to discuss something that preliminary knowledge might affect either the personnel or the board.
Thank you. Motion made to move in executive session. I'm gonna roll call Deb.
We need to also.
Aye.
Before you do. We need
go ahead.
to ask, Mr. Haas, and do we want our principals also?
Administration.
Yes, please.
Do we need Flora?
I don't think so.
Flora, would you like to go home?
Of course. Takes me an hour and a half to get there.
Okay, I got a yes from Deb to go to executive session. Margot,
Yes.
David Clark,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Priscilla,
Yes.
Jason,
Yes.
Ian,
Yes.
Jack.
Sure.
All right, let's give us just a couple minutes to clear the slate. We are out of executive session, and I'd like to have a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding COVID-19 vaccines.
So moved.
Thank you, Priscilla. I'd like to roll call that. Deb,
Could you come to me at the end, please? I'm thinking.
Margot,
Yes.
David,
Yes.
Brenda,
Yes.
Priscilla,
Yes.
Jason,
No.
Ian,
Yes.
Jack,
Yeah,
Deb,
Oh, we're at the end. Okay, my answer is no.
6 yes, 2 no. Motion passes. Meeting is adjourned at 9:05.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.